nothing but Star Wars. Give me the Star Wars. Don't let them end.
Bienvenidos, worldwide fans of our planet's hottest entertainment with an edge from a galaxy far, far away. Jaime En Fuego here, welcoming you once again to my namesake program, Enfuegotainment. That's right, and yes, this is all about none other than Star Wars Ahsoka. That's right, we are talking about none other than Snips, kinda grown up at least a little bit, getting her own book, which I believe came out in 2016, if I'm not mistaken, and the audiobook actually being done by none other than Ashley Eckstein, I believe, who voiced Ms. Tano on, both Rebels and on, Clone Wars, and she just made her return on Clone Wars Clone Wars Season 7, this episode where she's going deep in the Coruscant and stuff, but this book takes place decent amount after that, as a matter of fact. This takes place, over a year after the founding of the Empire in Order 66 and all that other stuff, and so it's cool that they decided to actually come back to the character, and as you see me without a physical copy of a book, that's because in self-quarantine, feeling good, but not really going out and interacting with a lot of people, and so, yeah, lots more time to read and to take in stuff like this, so I listened to the Audible, and cool thing about both Audible and audiobooks.com is that both of those destinations for listening will give you 2 free books, and so you can check out something like this. I'm about to check out A New Dawn, which is like a Rebels prequel right after that, but I've become a big fan of these they're not quite audio dramas, I guess you could say, but they really, with sound effects and with just various voices and stuff like that, often not various voice actors per se like you would get in those 90s audio dramas like Shadows of the Empire and, Heir to the Empire stuff that I liked so much, but, these are still very cool. They're unabridged text. And yeah, they just really bring you right into the action, and they're very immersive, and they're very cool, and they're great for all of those who are just holed up in their homes and in exile, so to speak. But speaking of being in exile, that's exactly where Ahsoka is right when we meet her. She is on this remote place in the Outer Rim, and she's kind of hiding out with this family, and they are about to celebrate the first Empire Day, basically the 1-year anniversary, as I mentioned, and so there are new Imperials starting to all make their way out to this small place on the Outer Rim. I forget if it's a moon or a planet. It's inconsequential, but so nonetheless, that is where we initially join her after there's a brief flashback. That's one thing about these Star Wars books, and not just in how they're written, but also with listening to them as well. They're very heavy on flashback without necessarily giving adequate context for the listener and stuff, so that's definitely one thing to keep in mind. And yeah, it starts out with the besieged Mandalore and with her fighting Darth Maul, but then it flashes forward to where we are currently, and when she gets wind that, yeah, there's all these Imperials asking about wanting to meet all of the new people, that are here, and, blah, 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 come to this whole festival with us, and she's like, nope, time to peace out, gotta get the hell out of here. So she ends up going and stealing one of the ships, and she feels bad about it, but what else is she gonna do? And then she heads out to this other Outer Rim moon, which is in a little bit better shape, but she befriends these 2 orphans, and these 2 orphans essentially get her kind of clued in to some of the just dissent, distrust, and almost it's like the beginnings of the insurgency before it's even a rebellion. And it's something that as she befriends these 2 girls, these 2 orphans, and she claims herself to also be an orphan, she's going under a false name at that particular point, and so on, but it's kind of cool the way she gets plugged in, and then immediately just kind of starts stoking the flames of all of these people who are already a little bit upset with the Imperial presence finally getting to those Outer Rim areas, these moons and planets and stuff like that. And as the mistreatment with all of the people who are trying to mine all of these different minerals and stuff like that, and we're presuming they're trying to get raw materials that they can, take to assist with building the Death Star. I also just recently read the Tarkin stuff, that first trade paperback and novel and stuff, and so we know that this was happening all over the galaxy, is that the Empire was trying to harvest all of these natural metals and minerals and specific resources for not just the aid of their expansion and their growth, but also to continue the secret plans of building the Death Star. And I can't remember if they get that specific about it. All that we really learn, that I recall as I just buzzed through this today, is that the soil is being left so depleted after all these harvests are coming through, that it's very much like those aliens in ID4, like, hey, we're gonna go from planet to planet and suck up all the natural resources and then just sprinkle them with crocodile and done, just cast them aside and whatnot. And so that aids in Ahsoka getting a little, just this group together, which is essentially, those two former orphan girls that I mentioned, and then just a few, confidants and friends and, so on. And they have this little attack and they blow up a bunch of Imperial walkers and stuff, but a key character dies, the husband of this older woman, and Ahsoka finally decides to reveal who she actually is after keeping this secret identity the whole time. In turn, the older girl is mad at her, and but she has revealed herself as a Jedi in this battle, so she has to get out of there, and she goes, and I don't want to spoil the entirety of this. I'm maybe about a third of the way through the proceedings here, but it's just very cool because she has some run-ins with space pirates. She goes around, essentially she goes back to that first planet she was on when we initially meet up with her, and she starts doing some smuggling for them, but the true nature of the smuggling reveals itself eventually, and she ends up in touch with Bail Organa, who's kind of surveying the galaxy for just series of good deeds in various areas, and he's just like, oh, maybe these people would be sympathetic to our cause, or this person in general who's orchestrating all of this, or whatever. So yes, in turn, she eventually gets hooked up with him, and with see some old familiar faces. But it's a well-written novel, and it's especially nice hearing Ashley voice it herself, because it does feel very much like the Clone Wars Legacy stuff that I mentioned, an extension, and it is truly one that bridges the gap. As somebody who has not really watched Rebels and is about to start that very soon, it's cool to have the context of just what she had to do to segue back into active involvement, and it's fascinating. We also get brief bits with we get a brief flashback to Anakin, back when Snips was first coming onto that planet at the beginning of the Clone Wars and stuff in the movie. And I'll be very candid, I wasn't the biggest fan of Ahsoka in that, especially I don't like that CGI Clone Wars movie very much. I was quite a fan of everything that they did with the Clone Wars thing that the Samurai Jack guy did, but I did not like the Clone Wars CGI film. But the show, over time, through Dave Filoni and his team, developed into something very impressive, and Ahsoka's character, especially with everything that went down with, the accusations about the Jedi Temple, and you find out what's gone down with her faking her death and burying her lightsabers, and Rex also faking his death because he escaped Order 66 because he'd pulling that piece of circuitry or whatever it was out of his body and stuff. And so while it's been fun with some of those Clone Wars episodes, I liked the Bad Batch and that little bit, but I felt like, how there were always throwaway Clone Wars episodes, that episode 5 with Ahsoka didn't do it for me anywhere near as much as this story did. And this story for me is on the cool level of tying things up like they did in Dark Disciple with Ventress, in Son of Dathomir, that Dark Horse by now way of Marvel book about Darth Maul. And so I don't know, this is the sort of very expansive supplemental coverage that I really dig the hell out of. Problem for me is, having not watched Rebels yet, is I only know about being the Grand Inquisitor and Inquisitors and stuff. I know he's the big bad from Rebels. I remember at least that a little bit, but this is the sixth brother or something. And it's funny because I'm reading Star Wars, Darth Vader, the Dark Lord of the Sith, I want to say it's called. It's the second Darth Vader series, not the original 25 issues, the second 25 issues where he goes and he has to get a new lightsaber, and he gets mixed up with the involved in, you know, these different inquisitors, and I forget what the exact name is for it because once again I haven't delved into Rebels, so this is newer stuff for me, but it's cool because it gave like some context and some groundwork, and it's also cool to see just, you know, a young force sensitive girl on the original planet that Ahsoka is on, and just how she kind of takes her under her wing. It's really about Ahsoka being just a very positive role model to these younger girls, you know, some on the first planet that she's on, and then some on the second, most notably those two sisters. And yeah, I mean, even though it's considered a young adult novel, it still has death, it still has violence. They talk about, you know, that sixth brother like cutting Peeps in half with his double saber, and so I mean, it doesn't shy away from stuff that pushes the boundary, very similar to what they did with Dark Disciple, very similar to what they did with you know, Son of Dathomir. And so it's funny, at this point, I'm really into the Clone Wars era. I'm into the prequel era, you know, very much. I guess it's you know, it's the Age of Republic, as they've at least classified it in the comics, and I think in the actual timeline official in and of itself. So I can't recommend the heck out of this enough. I mean, go track down the book if that's more your thing, but really, Audible, audiobooks.com, I know there's a few other smaller places where you could probably obtain this. It's great. I really enjoyed it, and at this point I can't wait to listen to A New Dawn and start watching Rebels on Disney Plus and just really get the full scope of just the back half of this you know, of this prequels era, post-Republic. You know, it's cool, man. I really dig it. So that's just a little bit about it. You're going to see lots more Star Wars reviews coming soon from me, most notably that second Darth Vader series, since it takes place before the one that was actually released beforehand. So without getting too confusing, also reviews of, you know, boy, I probably said Tarkin when I actually met, oh goodness, why is his name eluding me? Sir Blue, and I'm going to get totally roasted in the Thrawn. Damn it, thank goodness I remembered it without having to go and like actually make a cut and remember. But yeah, the Thrawn trade paperback that I read, and I started listening to that book already. I mean, that's fascinating, all the different stuff that's going on in the galaxy at this particular point. There's so many different goddamn names, whether it's planets, whether it's characters. It's a lot, guys, but the lore in and of itself is very rich, very intriguing. I dig the hell out of it, and my canon coverage continues going forward. So I've been Jaime En Fuego. Y'all can find me on all social media sectors like Twitter and Instagram, Facebook, and obviously here on YouTube. With the craziness of the world, I've been a little quieter on social media, with the exception of putting some stuff out on my YouTube, but that is all about to change because a week from the day of this filming, on April 1st, I am launching my personal Patreon, and yes, I cover spooktacular, scary stuff on the Horror Show Patreon. That's not going anywhere. That has continued unfaltered. But if you would like to support me directly and just be a you know, cool person, just throwing a little bit in the tip jar, I guess is a funny way of putting it. But if you have something film-wise that you would like me to review, there's also going to be a book of the month that is going to be voted on. There's just going to be all kinds of additional interaction and stuff that I'm going to be doing on there. Lots of Star Wars coverage here on the regular YouTube, not going anywhere, along with reviews of comedies, action films, you know, indie art house stuff, all kinds of goodness. So that's not going to alter either. In fact, with me being at home so much more lately, it's going to ramp up even more so. The Horror Show channel, youtube.com/The Horror Show channel. Please continue to support there. We have a ton of backlog content. That's not slowing either. And then lastly, every Monday evening, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, on the Willis Greedia YouTube channel, we were doing a box office program called Show Business. Myself, CP, the showrunner over there, Chauncey K. Robinson, and none other than Lindsay Mimsy on my 2 cents of nonsense. But that is, we're trying to reformat the show without any new movies coming out for the foreseeable future, which breaks my heart, but it is what it is. So stay tuned this last Monday of March, because I think we're going to be doing a live commentary watch along sort of thing. So stay tuned to all of our respective social medias. It is greatly appreciated. And until the real of Ka comes around once more, I shall say hasta luego, Cinemigos, constant readers and viewers alike. But I am hopeful that we get to share more of this palaver sooner rather than later. And until that instance occurs, remember, may the Force be with you always. We all need it right now.